Robert Lufkin, medical doctor.
Spent my whole career in the medical school, teaching, practicing medicine. Nutrition science and dietitians, their education is funded by junk food companies. Just like doctors, our education is funded by pharmaceutical companies. Obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, hypertension, Alzheimer's disease, and even mental illness. These are a whole group of seemingly unrelated diseases. These diseases, in my opinion, and the evidence is very strong, and I cite the peer-reviewed articles in the book, that they're actually driven at a root cause level by
Robert Lufkin, medical doctor, author. Thank you for joining today this interview. I'm so thrilled to have you. It's fantastic because, matter of fact, coincidence. Show me yours, I show you. I show you mine.
Oh, nice. Well, it's a huge pleasure to be here today, Jean. I'm obviously a fan of the magazine and your work and all the stuff you do. So it's a real honor and a pleasure to join you today. I'm really looking forward to it. We're going to have fun.
Thank you. I have to say something. Mine is bigger than yours.
Yeah, Zoom does that. or Riverside, sorry, whatever we're recording with. Yeah,
that was a good answer. That's a great answer. All right, let's jump into the topic that we want to explore today. So this book, why? What drive you to write this book as a doctor? You're coming from, for me, the medical field is so important and so kind of, I would say, conservative in a way, but you go countercurrent with this book and where your attitude in general. And you're still a doctor, you're a professor, you're an author, you have so many publications, peer review, 200 somethings, I think, co-signed. So why this book?
Yeah, great question. And let me just say, like, I'm not a conspiracy theorist. I'm coming at this as you say, I've spent my whole career in the medical school, teaching, practicing medicine. So I'm really part of the problem. You can blame me. But and the book is very critical of Western medicine. I want to say that. But I also want to go on record saying I believe in Western medicine. That's why I still have my job. And I think, for example, in the 20th century, Western medicine transformed our lives with public health measures and all the pills and surgeries that were developed. It just made the world a better place for all of us. And even today, if I get hit by a car in front of my house, I'm going to want a blood transfusion and a splenectomy. And, I'm going to want those acute things that Western medicine can provide better than any other way.
I agree.
But the problem is, and what the book is about, is that in the 21st century now, we're facing literally an unprecedented tsunami of chronic diseases.
Correct.
These are diseases that they were present in the 20th century, but in the 21st century, they're in unprecedented numbers, even accounting for population differences. And these are a whole group of seemingly unrelated diseases, all the way from obesity, diabetes, heart disease, cancer, hypertension, Alzheimer's disease, and even mental illness.
Mm-hmm.
And the problem is when Western medicine sees these diseases, which now take up 80% of our healthcare system, these diseases, the response is to apply the same pills and medicine that were so effective in the 20th century. The problem is they don't work on these chronic diseases, and they may be life-saving in the short term, as far as treating the symptoms. But the problem is this approach doesn't address the underlying root cause. So these diseases continue to progress and get worse and worse and worse. In fact, the pills and surgery can even mask the symptoms. So it doesn't bother us anymore and the disease progresses. So that's kind of where I'm coming from this. And personally, what drove me to do it was I was minding my own business as a medical school professor, taking millions of dollars from my lab for drug companies and the government to do research, writing papers. But then I was sort of dragged kicking and screaming into this when I came down with four of these diseases myself.
Yourself, experimenting on yourself.
Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, I'd like to say I'm doing this because I want to make the world a better place, but no, it was out of self-interest, self-preservation. I got these diseases and I realized, I went to my doctors, they prescribed a prescription drug for each one of them. And I said, what about lifestyle? Is there anything else I could do?
Yeah.
And they said, no, not really. Lifestyle doesn't work. And you're going to take these pills for the rest of your life, so get used to it. And I knew enough from medicine that it wasn't going to end well. I still had two little girls in elementary school, and I was trying to, I basically, out of desperation, began to see if there was any other possibilities.
Right.
And what I realized, there was a huge body of evidence that had been written that I wasn't aware of, and sadly, many of my colleagues are still not aware of, that give a possibility for treating these diseases. And basically that's what I did. I dove into literature and found some amazing things. It just blew my mind. And I applied it to myself. And when I did, interestingly enough, I went back to the doctors. They thought the labs were broken, the machines were broken or something. But long story short, I was able to reverse those diseases and get off the medications. And the purpose of the book is, now I want to make the world a better place. I want to share this
now you're ready for it, let's say.
Yeah, I want to share this information with other people so that they don't make the same mistake that I did, because the advice that's still given, sadly, to most people with these diseases is the advice that I got even today from supposedly trusted medical sources.
Yeah, I think it's like, solving the problem, it's one, but maybe the way that we should address this situation is by training doctors to be more open to that. Like when you go to medical school, the things you've learned when you got sick are not the things that you've learned in school, correct?
Yeah. I mean, and medical education is still teaching in many of these areas, teaching the wrong information, which I believe is incorrect and potentially harmful about the best way to approach these diseases. And that's the purpose. That's the purpose of this book, to try and get the message out.
Yeah. And so those diseases that we're talking about that are killing people, mainly, if I listen to what you say across social media platforms, speeches, talk, publication, and everything you write down, I have to go through the book now, but they're mainly related to food.
Yeah, that's absolutely. There are a number of things that sort of fit under the lifestyle approach, which is what this book is about, which my referring doctors said didn't work. But actually, if you do it the way that I did it, it works.
Yeah.
It worked for me, and it'll work for other people. So
really.
when applied appropriately, this is transformative. And I would argue this lifestyle approach is more powerful than any, for most of us, it will be the most powerful medicine we ever get in our life. And, but yeah, it's at a very basic level, it's nutrition, because that's the one medicine most people on earth eat at least once a day, take into their mouth. And so it's based on nutrition. Now we're not going to omit toxins and other things in our environment, mold, Lyme disease, other, heavy metals that can take us off, or sleep, exercise, stress. Those things can all, derail the nutrition, even if our nutrition's perfect. So it's a combination of all those things. And we'll even talk about, supplements and even biohacking and going further. And
by the way, what is biohacking? So many people are asking, what is biohacking? Yeah. Uh,
Yeah.
what would be your definition of biohacking, by the way?
Well, like I said, I'm a huge fan of the work you do,
Thank
and
you.
you're the master of this, and so obviously, I I think as applied to this situation and my situation, I think there's a huge role for citizen scientists, if you will, for individuals to take control of their lives, and
Hmm.
that is through these lifestyle things, and that may mean if I have irritable bowel disease or one of those chronic diseases I mentioned, or migraines,
Yeah.
or any polycystic ovary disease, or any number of things you could have there, that one approach we would do is we would do a elimination diet where we take whatever we're eating, and then we basically cut out dairy and see if that's an effect. Then we would maybe cut out grains and see if we get better there, or maybe we adjust the macronutrient levels. So in a sense, we are biohacking, but
Yeah.
it's an involvement with an experiment, an N of one, which is, the most interesting experiment of all, because it's about each of us.
Each of us.
There's nothing more interesting than each of our own lives.
Yeah.
And
And
nobody
then
cares more about our health than we all each do about our own health.
yeah, and I agree. We are all unique snowflakes. I always repeat this sentence because it's so different for everyone. But at the base of everything, I think that many people forget one simple parameter is like 90% of our health is based on natural elements, the light, the sound, sleep, walk, and all these things that they neglect. And because we're in America, we tend to think that, oh, I have a problem to fix or I want to improve myself. Give me a pill for that. It doesn't work that way. You need to, yeah, you need to walk, you need to sleep, you need to see the sunlight in the morning to sleep better at night. All these things that some people call biohacking. I don't, because it's not biohacking. You're not changing anything from nature. Then the adds on of self experimentation, like you said, uh, give more feedback on and more optimization on the human side of it. What's your take on the supplement? You mentioned supplement. It's always like a critical things to discuss because many doctors say don't take any supplement. They're not regulated. They're not regulated. They're not this. You don't know what you're taking. You don't know the molecule. There is no studies on it. But you take supplement, I know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, supplements are important. First of all, if no question, if I'm deficient in vitamin D or something, I'm going to take a vitamin D pill and bring my supplements back to level. And I think most people would agree that we want to correct deficiencies with supplements. Then the question becomes, what about add-ons?
Mhm. Right.
NAD precursor, spermidine, even resveratrol still,
Yeah,
gets
still
talked
in the
about, and
controversy. Yeah.
and they're innumerable supplements. And I think personally, I think there's a role to play for those above and beyond lifestyle. And in the book, we talk about, rapamycin,
Hmm.
longevity drug, about turning mTOR down.
Yeah.
And I take rapamycin for longevity, but I I would recommend that anyone that, first of all, I approve of supplements, with the caveats you say that they are less regulated than prescription drugs. So we have to be careful that we're getting what we think we're getting. But, in the right situation, I think supplements are great. But I wouldn't, like in the case of rapamycin, people just say, hey, if this drug reverses or decreases my chance of all those chronic diseases, which I would submit it does, and
Yeah.
there's evidence
Yeah.
for it, at least in animal models, and actually improve longevity, why don't I just take rapamycin and forget about diet and stress and sleep and
That's the
everything?
problem.
Well, I think, the answer is we all want a pill, but the problem is we really don't understand things very well. Even, rapamycin, mTOR,
Mhm.
which rapamycin acts on, was only discovered 20 years ago at
True.
the turn of the century. So, um, metabolism is extremely, extremely complex. A friend of mine says, yeah, metabolism is extremely complex. It's not rocket science. It's much more complicated.
I love it. I like that.
And it's true. I mean, you think about it, and even mTOR, mTOR interacts with other important switching molecules, AMP
Right.
kinase and
Yeah.
sirtuins, and it's a very complex system. So, and we can see that already with I don't know if you've talked about the ITP, the intervention testing program, with your audience, and you see that with rapamycin is it's the poster child, the most successful pharmaceutical intervention in the ITP. But when you take acarbose, which is another diabetes drug, FDA approved, that can be taken off label for longevity, which has a small improvement on itself. When you combine rapamycin plus acarbose in the ITP, you get a bigger effect than either one together, which means that there's some synergies going on with rapamycin and acarbose that we really don't understand. So to take these drugs without getting your lifestyle in order first, I think one is missing out on a huge, huge opportunity,
Yeah.
because, as good as the pills are, the lifestyle is really foundational and will make the pills even better. So,
It's true.
so I'm all in on, red light therapy and all the
Yeah.
other stuff, and, doing that kind of stuff. But for me, and I would encourage everyone I talk to get their lifestyle in place first, because it's going to amplify the effects of all these add-ons.
Correct. Yeah, I'm so into that. This is what I tried to translate into life spanning, actually, because it was no words explaining. Like, some people were saying, like, it's biohacking. It's not biohacking. It's normal longevity. It's not longevity. It's lifespan. It's lifespan or health span. And I said, like, okay. Let's fix this forever. Lifespanning is going to englobe everything. We're there now. Looking at these, like, we need those basics. This, like I always say, we don't build castle on sand, and it's the same for the human being at large. Is the problem coming from America more than the rest of the world?
Which problem?
The problem and not living longer. We're going backward these days.
Yeah, I mean, the junk food consumption is higher in America than certain other countries.
Mm.
There are toxic ingredients in the junk foods that are allowed in America that are not allowed in Europe, for
This is
example.
so surprising. So
The obvious example is glyphosate, which is a weed killer that grains in the United States are soaked in. Literally, it's called Roundup from Monsanto, but it's used everywhere. But there are 30 plus countries around the world that outlawed because of its association with cancer and other things. And somebody once made the comment, people in America eat as if healthcare were free.
it's true, yeah.
But
And it's not.
yeah, you can do side-to-side comparisons, even with junk foods from England versus the same product, the same Cocoa Puffs from the United States. And if you look at the ingredient list, there are many more, numbered coloring things in the US, and many more, I would submit, potentially harmful things. In general, the longer the ingredient list is, the worse it is. It's
and the more you
sort of a generally safe assumption,
Yeah.
anyway. But yeah, I think the problem is worse in the United States. Obesity rates are, higher here than in some countries. And but the problems with these chronic diseases are something that is faced around the world. Any population that has entered into kind of the Western lifestyle or Western type diet,
Yeah.
it's amazing. They transition, and people who for generations didn't have hypertension or, heart disease or cancer, now they start getting these things. And even, in the Native American population, the same thing happened here when there were 60 million buffalo here, and we basically, they were
eradicated.
exterminated.
Yeah.
And the native people, the Native Americans, were given food from the government. What were they given? They were given rice and flour and sugar, which which are basically carbohydrates. And suddenly those populations, like, the Pima Indians in Arizona, their type 2 diabetes rates
Yeah.
went through the
Through
roof,
the roof.
and all these chronic diseases. So yeah, the US has a lot of these problems, but they're not unique to the United States.
Yeah. One point I wanna go deeper into is, like, you talked about obesity and you talked about diabetes. Some people say that it's completely linked, and some people say that there is no link between those two um, illness. What do you think of that? What's your take on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think diabetes is the gateway drug for all the other chronic
Right.
diseases, but it doesn't mean that only fat people get cancer, only fat
Hmm.
people get Alzheimer's, only fat people got diabetes, because that's not true. Um, People who are thin can be metabolically unhealthy, and that's really what we're talking about, this metabolic disease. And that was the real wake up call for me in writing this book, that what I thought were separate diseases that all had separate pills and
Right.
surgery for
Yeah.
them, and the way that it's treated by still my colleagues in Western medicine. These diseases, in my opinion, and the evidence is very strong, and I cite the peer reviewed articles in the book, that they're actually driven at a root cause level by metabolic disease as an abnormality. It's the same metabolic disease that drives obesity, it drives type 2 diabetes, it drives cancer, heart disease, Alzheimer's, and even mental illness. Now, you
That's the point we're
people
going to
may
cover.
wonder, well, if I have this metabolic disease, I'm not fat, does that mean I'm not going to get any of the others? Well, no. We all get different things. Like, some people get Alzheimer's disease, some people get high blood pressure, some people get diabetes, then they get cancer.
Yeah.
Other people just get cancer.
Yeah.
And those are all in our future potentially, if we live long enough. And the challenge, and why we get one or the other, it's based on all sorts of things. Our genetics to some extent,
Hmm.
but genetics are really, for most of these chronic diseases, not as anywhere near as important as lifestyle. So even if your parents had this, you can change it with your
Yeah.
lifestyle.
Like epigenetic.
So
Yeah. We're
yeah,
talking epigenetic
that's a
and
that's a
yeah.
huge point. And one other point just rocked my world with this book is, and really changed my thinking about disease. As a doctor, I always thought of the diseases, these chronic diseases, either you have it or you don't. And you walk into a doctor's office and say, "Do I have Alzheimer's?" No, you don't. And then, 2 years later, you come back and I can't remember where my keys are. And yep, you've got Alzheimer's.
Yeah.
The same thing with, diabetes. I don't have diabetes now, but in a month when I walk in, oh, your blood sugar's up. Now you have diabetes. And I think if we wait, because these diseases, and this was a wake up call for me, don't begin the moment the doctor
Right.
diagnoses
Yeah.
them in the office.
Prevention.
They begin years
Yeah.
to decades beforehand. They actually start.
Yeah.
And if I wait until the doctor tells me, yep, you've got cancer, or oh, you've got
It's too late.
diabetes, or you've got Alzheimer's,
Yeah.
we've missed a huge
Point.
opportunity for
Really.
prevention.
Yeah.
And the medical system's really not set up for that. But how do we do prevention? It's lifestyle. This
Right.
healthy lifestyle will slow down
Yeah.
the advent of these diseases.
I agree with you. The lifestyle is the preventative maintenance of those disease. But in my opinion, I think it's like a full body MRI, like Prenuvo, or regular checkup, should be part of any health program for everybody that wants to live longer should pay attention to that. Like, I go every year to get a full body MRI scan, because if ever I had to have a cancer, I want it to be detected in phase 1, not in phase 4 or 3, when it's way too late. And we know that today chemotherapy doesn't work, for example. So it's like 99% failure in treatments. So
I totally
yeah.
agree with that. Yeah, the preventive health scans, the imaging, the blood tests. because the one secret to longevity is don't die of something stupid.
Yeah.
And I mean, not
Yeah.
to be cavalier about it, but there's a test for colon cancer, and it's a colonoscopy, and it's very effective at catching it early. And not having a colonoscopy is on a
Taking a
regular
risk.
basis is risking your life, and doing that. Just like if you want to live a long time, you don't do high risk behavior, and
Yeah.
not getting the cancer screens is
Yeah.
high risk behavior. Just like base jumping.
Yeah.
I stopped base jumping because it's a high risk behavior. If I want to live a long time, I'm not going to, ride a motorcycle without a helmet, or, do other
Not put
things
your
like that.
seat belt when you drive and things like that.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, but it's
Exactly.
true. I agree. By the way, how long do you think you're going to live?
Me?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, yeah, it's a fair question. I think with existing technology, and that's by optimizing lifestyle, and then maybe adding on some rapamycin, some judicious biohacking here and there. With currently existing technology, I think we can barring a traffic accident, or assuming we do things right, we can live to 100. And, it appears, human beings live, 110,
10,
up
20,
to
yeah.
120. And I think beyond that, we're going to need a paradigm shift. It may be those stem cells with the Yamanaka factors and partial epigenetic programming, and something that's a quantum change. And, as Peter Diamandis and others have talked about, is the idea is the science is moving fast now. It's not linear, it's exponential. So if we can just, they talk about longevity escape velocity. So if we can just live long enough until the science keeps pushing back further and further, then who knows what's possible. So I think that's my thought on it, at least.
Yeah, I agree. Aubrey agree. Big battlefield on that longevity escape velocity. Yes. I want to jump back on that diet, lifestyle, and fat people in general. I think that people are not equally fat, because I'm going to let you explain that, but there's 3 type of different fat people, like the fat on their skin, the fat in the belly, and the fatty liver. You can be skinny like that and have a fatty liver, and it leads you to the same kind of illness, correct?
That's right. And fatty liver disease, we have a whole chapter in the book on it, on non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. It's fascinating. Your audience may know this was a disease that didn't exist before 1980. It's like
Crazy,
it was never reported. And before then, you got fatty liver from some types of infections, but the big thing was alcoholic fatty liver disease. And alcoholics, when they drink, they deliver fat. And so what happened in the 1980s, liver disease took off. If this fatty liver disease, there was more and more of it. And the doctors would say, well, you need to stop drinking. And the person would say, hey, I've never touched a drop of alcohol. And they go, right, sure, but wouldn't stop it, and you can imagine the tension. And then eventually there were children coming down with this fatty liver disease, and who had obviously never had any alcohol. And then they realized it's something else. So they called it non-alcoholic fatty liver disease. Fast forward now, 40 years, non-alcoholic fatty liver disease is the number one cause of liver failure in the world, globally, and also the number one cause of liver transplants for women, and soon to be for men. So it's eclipsed everything else. And what causes it? Nobody knows in Western medicine. It's like, well, if you have fatty liver, you need to eat less fat.
That's what they say.
So fat. And it's not really related to that. In the book, and there's very strong evidence now that it's related to metabolism of a type of carbohydrate called fructose.
That comes from fruits normally, but
unlike glucose and almost all the other sugars, which are metabolized throughout the body, fructose is very similar to alcohol. It's only metabolized by the liver to any significant amount. So liver's a detoxification organ, and fructose has the same very similar pathways as alcohol. In other words, when it's broken down, it causes fat deposition in the liver, causes insulin resistance, causes inflammation, raises urate, decreases endothelial nitric oxide. So the glycocalyx is depressed. People get hypertension from drinking alcohol. You get hypertension from fatty liver disease and fructose and the whole metabolic syndrome. And this fatty liver is but one manifestation, again, of this underlying metabolic disease, which is a root cause for all these things like that.
It's scary, but I think that this fructose is, well, I don't know. This is the thing that you hear in the street and in certain area and spheres. Like people say that it's because the American diet is mainly added with fructose on everything. Like even maple syrup, it's not even maple syrup in America. It's more mainly fructose syrup added with a bit of maple syrup.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious question is what happened in the 1980s
exactly.
around the world that causes this new liver disease to explode
Yeah.
everywhere and become the number one liver disease? Well, a couple things happened in the 1980s, and there was a new compound developed that replaced cane sugar in a lot of the junk foods and other fast foods, and it was called high fructose corn syrup. It was made from corn, and even though the fructose amount is the same as in glucose, more or less 50-50 or slight variation on that, high fructose corn syrup was very inexpensive because it's in the United States, it's subsidized by the government. In other words, corn is artificially low in price, as is soybeans, because of the Farm Bill. So things like high fructose corn syrup are much cheaper, and they replaced everything in cane sugar. Coca-Cola, Pepsi famously switched to high fructose corn syrup in the 1980s. And then, globally, the same thing happened. One other thing happened in the 1990s, right afterwards, was again, through sort of misguided politics, people believed that saturated fats were causing heart disease.
Right. Don't eat eggs. Yeah, they were saying.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And at that point, food was fried in beef tallow typically, or saturated fat around the world, just because it was easy and everything. Well, there was a big campaign in the United States. A billionaire funded it with the hope of making people healthier, actually. And they wanted to convert fryers from this high saturated fat beef tallow, which happens to be very stable at high temperature and very healthy. And they substitute it. What did they substitute it with it? A corn product called canola oil or seed oils, which again are artificially cheaper because they're subsidized by the government.
Yeah.
But also they have a disturbing quality. They're unstable at high heat, and they basically degrade into toxins. And beginning in 1990, McDonald's, Burger King switched to corn fryers, and essentially everywhere else in the world followed suit. You can still find beef tallow occasionally, but it's more expensive, and it's definitely the exception.
Yeah.
And so
I think they do skincare now with that.
Yeah. And even, you get in a situation where trusted medical authorities, like our institutions, like the American Heart Association, where people expect them to, say the truth. And they have on their website that these seed oils, the canola oil, is heart healthy. And they do that because it does lower the cholesterol, but it raises insulin resistance. And in studies have shown you're actually more likely to die of other things, at least in some of the studies. Also, the American Heart Institute was essentially funded in the 1950s by Procter & Gamble. When Procter & Gamble, of course, is a maker of the original seed oil, which was repurposed engine lubricant from German submarines.
Yeah, that's why people still say that it's.
And they found out people would eat it, and it's a lot cheaper than the saturated fat oils. And so it's what are people to do? You know,
it's awful. Thanks for all these deep explanation. Now I have a question for you, because it's always like I so enjoy reading your posts on LinkedIn, and it's always funny the reaction of people and the thing. And sometimes you go really provocative. Yesterday or 2 days ago, you posted some things like, "Don't eat carbs, eat fat," and some dietitian reacted, and some other reacted. And why did you say that? We
Yeah,
shouldn't
that's a great.
eat carbs?
I will have to say I have nothing against dietitians. My mom was a dietitian, so I was. But
Now we're going to talk about mental health.
yeah. But the American Dietetic Association, or the Organization of Dietitians, is also was funded, or was started out with an influence from a religious organization that
True.
had a definite dietary agenda,
Yeah.
and that has permeated the institution. And today, nutrition science and dietitians, their education is funded by junk food companies, just like doctors. Our education is funded by pharmaceutical companies, so what could
Yeah.
go wrong, right?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, exactly.
so why did I say carbs are bad
Yeah.
and you should eat fat? Well, of the three macronutrients, as your audience knows, fat and protein are required for life. If I stop eating those, I will die. On the other hand, carbohydrates are not required. Starches, sugars, refined carbohydrates are not required. And there are numerous examples of human civilizations that eat very little carbohydrates, and
Yeah.
they do just
Yeah.
fine.
Yeah.
The other thing with carbohydrates is they drive insulin, resistance, they drive inflammation, they drive oxidation. They have all sorts of bad effects. So if we don't need them and they potentially harm us, why eat them at all? I mean, don't get me wrong. I love donuts. I
Oh,
love cakes.
is that
I
true?
love
Yeah.
I love all sorts of baked foods, but I
Wow.
don't eat them now for one reason, because there's one thing I love more, and that's my girls, my daughters, and I want to live to see them. And I know, at least in my belief from what I've read, that eating a lot of carbohydrates is going to drive the metabolic disease and manifest as one or more of these chronic diseases. I think I'm more likely to get a heart attack from eating donuts and cake than I am from eating saturated fat and butter.
Right. Yeah.
So
That is
the
true.
other part of that high fat, let me just circle back. I mean, high healthy fat. So saturated fats. I don't mean the unhealthy seed oils. Let's leave those behind. The canola oil, rapeseed oil, on and on, corn oil, soybean oil. But yeah, I believe that. And a lot of dietitians don't,
Well, I
they're
think
not
it's like,
taught that.
yeah,
Yeah.
I believe that most people just think that it's because you cannot be on ketosis all the time. And even if you go training workouts, maybe carbs could be a good starting point, because before you get into the fat, it's going to take a while and the energies may not be there. I don't know. I eat pasta pretty much every day. Because it's good for the brain, but I don't eat donuts.
I think the thinking is changing about that. It used to be that, oh, I got a carb load. I'm going to run a
Yeah.
marathon. I'm going to eat
Yeah. Yeah.
spaghetti and everything. And now we're, increasingly seeing, peak performance athletes that are
Vegan.
don't do that anymore, and they do just fine. And there are even races that people are in ketosis, or they're fasting races where
Yeah.
people run fasting. Like you fast all the time. I
Yeah.
fast all the
Yeah.
time. I work out fasted. I don't
Fasting,
eat
and
until
it's
noon
incredible.
or lunchtime, and it's
Yeah.
great. My
Yeah.
mind is clear.
It's
My
but
brain is sharp.
it takes this grind of getting there, because I do remember the first, I was never working out fasting. When I started, it was really hard to fast and go work out. But when you get into that process and you see the energy that you are getting from fasting and you perform better, I agree. I'm with you on that. I work out
Yeah,
fasting.
and that my idea of fasting has really changed too. And I think a lot of people still have strange ideas that fasting is hard, and
Yeah.
actually your appetite decreases. So it's actually pretty easy. But I just saw something in the news that on a college campus, some students were protesting something. I don't even remember what it was, but their
They were
protest
French.
was, yeah, no, I don't know. but their protest was, it goes, students go on strike and fast for 12 hours
Whoa,
in
wow.
protest of this. I'm thinking, you and I do that every day. That's like, at least, like
Yeah, they're putting their life in danger.
yeah.
Yeah, and fasting has been neglected for a long time. Now it's getting into the crowd, and people are using it more and more. Of course, women cannot fast 30 days a month for some reason. But if you do intermittent fasting properly, this is a magic pill.
Yeah, it's a game changer
Yeah,
for sure. I
completely.
mean, I feel so much better when I do it. I mean, it's not like, and I don't miss the food, and my brain's sharper,
Yeah, and you are
I'm
an
much clearer.
hyperactive person too. What is coming next after this book? So when we met last time in Los Angeles, you told me that this book is going to go into all universities, medical school.
Yeah, we're talking about your comment about training the next generation of doctors. There's the famous quote that scientific ideas change not when scientists agree to change their opinion, but when everyone who has a hold opinion dies out. So science advances one funeral at a time. So,
I love it.
but to reach the new generation of doctors, we several people who've read the book have suggested this, and now we've begun it. We're setting up a nonprofit foundation, and the publisher has agreed to make the books available at cost. I'm going to turn my royalties into any royalties into this foundation. And the foundation, the purpose will be to distribute the books at no charge, at no charge, actually, to all medical students.
Wow.
Initially in the U.S., although we just reached out to other places around the world, and we're prepared to do it not just to medical students, but to dietitians, dentists, other nurses, nurse practitioners, other healthcare providers as well. But the idea is to influence the next generation, at least to start the conversation about metabolic health and the approach to these chronic diseases that are really going to define medicine for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. Now you're changing the world in this way, in a noble way. Hopefully, we're going to help you on that, because I think that with the network we have, the people who reach out, the people that are coming on the platform, we can help you to spread the words and the vibes on this, because what you say in this book is exactly what we say all the time to people. You say it in a way more deep and extended way, but the basics of our saying, it's there, it's the same. So we are on the same wavelength, we are on the same pathway, and we do the same. We want to educate people to live longer, better. Robert, thank you so much for this interview. It's thrilling to see what you're doing, because when I look at what you're doing, in between professor, speaker, author, and everything, when do you sleep?
I'm very careful. I used to never sleep at all. I had a pager, I was on call, but now I really pay attention to both quantity and quality of sleep. So I try and get 8 hours every night.
Yeah. Do you wear trackers to follow your sleep?
I wear exercise trackers. I'm switching sleep trackers right now. I've dropped the one I was using, and I'm looking for a new one. So I'm gonna dive in with you on that.
Yeah,
And I'm looking forward to when you're coming on our podcast soon. So now I can ask you questions, and I could pick your brain.
That was a beautiful moment with you, Robert. Thank you so much. So the book, and read the interview in Biohackers Magazine. It's going to be online at the same time as the publication of this. So we love you. Thank you.
Thanks so much, Sean. Love you too. This is great.
Thank you.